to talk about Archenemies by Marissa Meyer today. I have the Kindle version because I read things on Kindle. I'm going to talk about Archenemies because I have no friends who have read this and I need to talk about it, and I like watching videos of other people talk about it because it's fun and it makes you feel like you're having a conversation when you're not actually conversating with people. So, Archenemies is the second book in a trilogy by Marissa Meyer, who is the author of the Lunar Chronicles series. It's about superheroes. This is the second installment. The kind of premise of it, without being spoilery for the first book, is that there's this girl named Nova, and she is a prodigy, which are people who have like superpowers. Nova can do is she can put people to sleep, and she is part of this group called the Anarchists, and they are kind of like the villains in the world, and they're in opposition to the renegades, who are the superheroes or the quote-unquote good guys. Nova's alias as an anarchist is Nightmare because she puts people to sleep. So basically what she does is she decides to impersonate a renegade. She tries out to be a renegade basically, and she does this so that she can kind of get into their ranks and bring them down like from the inside. Well, she is impersonating a renegade, and her alias as a renegade is Insomnia because another one of her quote-unquote powers is that she doesn't sleep ever. She is put onto a team because when you become a renegade, you get put onto a team and someone has to accept you onto their team if you're going to be a renegade. And she gets accepted onto one team, and that is the team of Adrian Everhart, and his alias is Sketch because he can draw things and bring them to life. Kind of about Nova and her mission that she's going to kind of try to bring down the renegades, but as she's pretending to be a renegade, she gets to see more about like what they're like. There are renegades who are completely like jerks and they abuse their power and stuff like that, but there's also renegades like Adrian who are like really, they're good-hearted and they really want to help and make a good difference in the world. She's kind of conflicted as she's going back and forth between like these two roles, and also she's trying to keep it a secret. And then at the same time, Adrian has his own secret because he is moonlighting kind of as a vigilante who doesn't have to follow the renegade rules because they have a code that they have to follow. He's a vigilante called the Sentinel, and basically what he does is he also kind of goes after criminals and he'll bring them down, but he won't always follow the code and do everything that way. And he has a mission, and his mission is that he wants to find Nightmare. She can tell him some things that he thinks that she will know about his mother's death. I guess that's more of like a premise of what the Renegades like series is. This book, which is Archenemies, Adrian and Nova are growing closer together, and also they're kind of exploring their feelings for each other because they like each other, and also while they're trying to keep their identities like secret and that no one knows about them, and they're trying to further like their own like causes. That's I guess all I can say without getting into spoilers for what happens in Archenemies, and there will also be spoilers for what happens in Renegades probably because this is the second book. So if you haven't read either of these books, then you can stop watching right now and then go and pick them up and read them because they are really good. Marissa Meyer is a fantastic author. She does like such a great job with this. This series will hook you. It's very interesting. It's got a lot of intriguing like aspects to it. There's a lot of themes in it about like power and how much should one like side have, and like pros and cons of the renegades and the anarchists and stuff like that. And also it has really great characters. I love Nova Artino and I love Adrian Everhart, and I will like just love them until like I die. They're great characters, and they also have some really good supporting characters, and also characters that you'll love to hate probably. So go pick up Renegades and read it if you haven't, and then if you have read Renegades and you haven't read Archenemies, go read it. So the next section of this and the rest of this video will be spoilers for both Archenemies and Renegades. When I finished Renegades, I read it like I finished it like at night. So I was like, I'm gonna finish the book and then I'm gonna go to bed. And then I finished the book and then I could not go to bed because of that whole cliffhanger. It opens with Adrian and his team, and they're like investigating this thing, and these people have robbed like a hospital or something. They have these like medical drugs, and they have a prodigy with them who is called Hawthorne, and she can grow like limbs and then the limbs have thorns on them, so she's dangerous. They end up losing Hawthorne. Soon after that, everyone gets called into this giant meeting. It's all of the Renegades from like all the different teams, and it's like organization-wide like announcement kind of thing. They publicly like recognize Nova for killing Ingrid, being like an asset in this mission for killing Ingrid and then like saving all of these people from like getting more injured and stuff like that. In doing that, other than shaking up Nova because she thought maybe something was going to happen and they knew that she was a nightmare, it also has endeared her even more into the Renegades, and like as everything keeps going on, people begin trusting her more and more. Not everyone though. We'll get to that later. After this, they have a doctor like come up, and they explain that they have this new chemical and it's called Agent N, and they are going to outfit all of the Renegades with little vials of Agent N. And what Agent N is kind of like a medicine, but not really. It can be injected, or it can be like consumed like orally, or it can be put into a gas. Like there's all kinds of things that you can do with it. Like the most effective use of it is to inject it straight to a person. It takes away a prodigy's powers like permanently, and they can't get them back, and it's basically going to be seen as a measure of like punishment for like anarchists and bad guys and stuff like that, like criminals. Nova is very vehemently against it, basically, because this gives the Renegades too much power, and like what is going to be like the line of where we're going to draw when we're going to inject someone with Agent N, when we're going to say no, you're good, because basically what the Renegades are planning on doing is just giving it to everybody. They can use it at their discretion on when they believe like this needs to be done. You're not going to give someone a trial, you're not going to hear them out. It's technically supposed to be used as a last resort, but like when are we going to know when the last resort is? When you're giving it to us, telling us that we can use it at our discretion, and we can give it to somebody without like actually giving them a trial, without arresting them. So Nova like brings this argument into play, which is a very valid argument, and no one else is questioning this aside from Adrian. Pretty much everyone else sees this as this is a great idea because it eliminates this problem, and the reason that these people are so dangerous is because of their superpowers. So if we had Agent N, we could have just stuck Ingrid with it if like we had the chance, so, and then there would be no more detonator. What they do is they have a public demonstration to prove the effectiveness of Agent N. I knew who it was gonna be before he even came out on the stage. They mentioned that there was a prison like truck there, that so like they brought a prisoner, and I was like, I know what this is gonna be. It's gonna be that they found a way to use Max's powers and take the powers away from other prodigies, and they're gonna do it to Winston. And that is exactly what they did. Even though like Winston's not a good guy, and we all know this. He has done some pretty terrible things, especially since his power in particular targets children, and it only affects children. So it's not a good thing that he's able to like control children like puppets, hence his name, the Puppeteer. I feel like really harrowing and like sad to see Winston's powers get taken away from him. you're taking something away from someone that's like an integral part of them without actually like thinking it all the way through, I guess. So they just took Winston's powers away, and it didn't even help his case that before this he started controlling like the 2 children that were in the audience. So it just made the case for Agent N look even better. Took Winston's powers away, and he's up on the stage like sobbing and very distraught, and everyone just like starts clapping. Harrowing image to just think of Winston on the stage like sobbing, and then everyone around him is applauding this. It still kind of like invokes your sympathy, I guess. At least it invoked my sympathy. After that, we finally get a little bit of a pickup from that cliffhanger from Renegades. And so Nova and the other anarchists, Leroy and Honey, they go back to the catacombs and they meet with Ace. Ace wants Nova to get close to Adrian, or closer to Adrian, and also find his helmet. Ace's helmet is like in the artifacts department or whatever, and it's intact, and so they want Nova to get the helmet back to Ace so that he can like regain his strength and that they can launch another attack against the Renegades. Also, they want Nova to get a vial of Agent N. They want to use Agent N against the Renegades, because they don't have a problem with Agent N either, as long as it's not being used against them. Is a parallel, I guess, kind of between like the Renegades and the anarchists. They both like see the necessity of this agent as long as they are the ones that are in control of it, and they don't see as much of like the problems that could come up with it. Like, it can very easily be abused, or what if on accident someone else gets stuck with this agent and they lose their powers forever. It's permanent, so they don't even have like an anti-agent to it. It's just permanent, and they don't have a way to like reverse it if that's even needed. She agrees that she's going to do all of this to the best of her ability because she wants to help and please Ace, obviously, and also further this cause that she believes in because she hates the Renegades. She also has apprehensions about it, even though she's going to do it, because like she's going to try and get close to Adrian, but she's also a little bit apprehensive about it because she likes Adrian. She's afraid that she'll get too close to him and then like she'll come to terms with like she really likes him. And she also just doesn't agree with Agent N. She was very surprised that all the anarchists like wanted to get in on it, and she still is like, there's all of these problems with it. It could be pretty catastrophic for like everybody. At the same time, Adrian goes to the prison and talks to Winston because he wants information about his mother's murder, and his biggest lead was Nightmare, and now Nightmare is dead. The lead he has now is basically Winston, because Winston led them to Nightmare. Eventually Winston his interest is piqued because Adrian tells him that Nightmare's dead, and then Winston's like, are you sure that Nightmare's dead? And then Adrian's like, yes. So Winston tells him that if Adrian goes and gets this puppet that he had like as a child, he will tell Adrian something that he wants to know. He does get the puppet, and then he comes back, gives it to Winston, and then Winston says, Nightmare isn't dead, she's alive. So Adrian gets home and he has to tell his parents that Winston told him that Nightmare is alive, and then they just go, look, when he's pulling your leg, he's an anarchist, and he can't possibly know that. He's been in prison, and he hasn't even seen Nightmare. He doesn't know any of this, so how could he know that Nightmare's alive? Now, that question is raised. Also, everyone thinks that the Sentinel is dead because of this battle with Hawthorne, and that he fell into, like, the river, and he had this armor on, so it sank. And then they searched for his body, but they never found the Sentinel's body, because Sentinel Adrian. Nova starts working in the artifacts department, which is where Ace's helmet is being held. So she gets into the artifacts department, her request gets approved, and she starts working with them, and she finds Ace's helmet and finds out that it's been completely encased in a box of chromium, and it was made by Captain Chromium, and no one can get into it. So now she has another conundrum of not just get the helmet, but have to get the helmet out of this box of chromium. In the artifacts department, Adrian finds this like medallion that's on like a chain, and it's called Vitality Charm, and it basically, allegedly, what it does is you put it on and it will prevent diseases, sicknesses, and any physical ailments or anything like that that could harm an individual. Adrian puts on the charm and he goes to visit Max, and then he is able to like hug his little brother. He's able to like get into the quarantine with Max, like hug his brother, see him, talk to him like face to face without this glass between them. And it's like such a heartwarming moment, and I love Max, and he's so adorable. I'm with Nova. I'm kind of like enraged on his behalf that they've been using him to find, like, to make this Agent N. Everyone cares about Max, and he is Adrian's like younger brother, and people care about him, like Adrian and his friends, and Hugh and Simon, and Nova, but like at the same time they're also using him, and it just makes me sad and also kind of angry that they've been using this poor child who can't even control what his power is, so it's not even his fault. He's like, I also think that this could like protect against Agent N, like hypothetically. Nova also learns about the Vitality Charm, and Nova starts kind of like thinking about how she's going to get it, because if it protects against Agent N, she's going to need that when she steals the Agent N and when they decide to like unleash it on all the renegades later. So Frostbite and her team have been assigned to go and catch Hawthorne basically over Adrian's team, and Adrian doesn't like that, and he basically decides to go undercover as the Sentinel. Even though the Sentinel's supposed to be dead, he decides that he's going to go and follow them, and he's not going to reveal himself unless he feels like it's necessary. Frostbite and her team have captured Hawthorne, but they're not bringing her in. They're going to torture her to get information, and then once Hawthorne says you can't do that because they're going to see all of this like destruction to my limbs, and they're like, no they're not, because what we're gonna do is we're going to take this agent, because Hawthorne has a vial of Agent N. I think she got it approved from like one of the council members, and that's going to take away your prodigy powers, and then they won't be able to tell that you've been abused, because all your extra limbs and stuff, that's all gonna go away because that's your power. Obviously Frostbite and her team are some of the prime candidates of who are going to be abusing Agent N, because they already abuse people without Agent N, which you saw like in Renegades whenever they start just making a mess of the anarchists like little like hovel. It also made me mad because they had the deadener sound thing, which is like a metronome or whatever, and when Frostbite goes to get it from the artifacts department, she has to check it out from Nova. It made me mad when I realized that they were going to use the deadener to be able to torture Hawthorne, and then nobody would know because they have the metronome thing that nobody else is going to be able to hear it. And it was also scary because when Adrian like shot himself like into that situation, no one could hear anything that was going on. So I was like, oh my gosh, Adrian needs to get out of here because there's not going to be any help from the outside. In that little altercation, ultimately Frostbite decides to have Hawthorne killed and Adrian neutralized over neutralizing Hawthorne. So they kill Hawthorne, and it's so gruesome and like awful because they literally crush her head. So they kill Hawthorne, and then they go after Adrian, and Adrian does manage to get away, but what they've done now is that they can't come back with Hawthorne because they killed her. So what Frostbite and her team do is they pin the murder on the Sentinel, so now everyone thinks the Sentinel's a murderer. Also, after this we have like 4 chapters or so of just like the best part of the book. Nova has to get the Vitality Charm, and she knows that it's at Adrian's house basically because Adrian gave it to Simon. She doesn't like sneak in or break in because she's like invited in, but she kind of infiltrates their house in a way, and she does it with the purpose of getting the Vitality Charm, and Adrian is the only one that's home. Adrian brings her to his like painting studio, his art studio that he's been painting, and earlier in the book, Nova brought Adrian to this like little place where she thought that she, like when she was a kid, she discovered it, and like she had this dream with this statue and like this like forest kind of thing where she turned and looked at the statue, and then in the statue was like a star. Adrian started like painting this scene like on the walls of his studio. So Adrian shows it to Nova, and then they have like this moment. Nova tells him about the night that her parents and her sister were killed, and Adrian tells Nova about how he had these fears about his mother dying when he was a kid. I thought that he was being watched all the time by like this monster, and he would have nightmares about this monster and like taking away his mother, and then one day his mother did die and she didn't come home. So they kind of like share these stories with each other, and they have like some bonding moments. And then, which the monumentous occasion of all occasions, so in Nova telling her story to Adrian, it's like she's like, well, that's why she doesn't sleep. It's because of this traumatic event in her childhood, and every time she sleeps, she just has nightmares about it, and she hears these gunshots. He draws her noise-canceling headphones. He's like, look, these will cancel out everything, even gunshots. And then he hands them to her. She tries them out. She can't hear anything, and then they both lay down together and they take a nap, and it's like adorable. And I was texting my friend and I was like, they're taking a nap together. This is so adorable. But also, other than like that, it's huge because Nova doesn't sleep, and she slept for 24 hours almost. After Nova wakes up, she and Adrian like go upstairs, and then they have dinner with Hugh and Simon, like kind of like a family dinner, but obviously not, because Nova's there to steal this charm and ultimately bring down the renegades. They have this dinner, and they kind of talk a little bit more about Agent N and stuff, and afterwards Nova and Adrian go down back to his room, and they start like this movie. They actually kiss. Like, I didn't text my friend about this part because I was like, I might be loading her with this that she doesn't even read. So if I thought like the nap was adorable, then they kissed, and then it was like out the window. So while they're kissing, Nova decides to put Adrian to sleep with her power, which, why? It stressed me out because the last time Nova used her power undercover, she used it on Dana to make her go to sleep. Now Dana's suspicious of Nova because between that and then Nova being so against Agent N and all this, Dana's suspicious of Nova and is kind of like watching her and keeping an eye on her. So I was like, Nova, you need to stop using your power on people when you're not Nightmare, because it's going to make everyone like suspicious. And how do you not think that Adrian's gonna notice that you put him to sleep in the middle of you kissing? Puts him to sleep, and then she goes searching for the vitality charm, and she finds it, like hides it, and then she goes back into Adrian's like studio and sees like the star with the statue, and she takes the star, but I don't think she meant to take it. What she does is she like puts her hands out so that she can hold it, and then it kind of like goes like boom like, and then it just embeds itself like onto her bracelet that her dad made in like the little thing where like a gem was supposed to be. So now it's just like on her bracelet, and I don't know what's up with that, but I'm sure it's something, because it wouldn't be in there if it didn't mean like anything. She leaves Adrian's house. There's another meeting with Ace, and she tells them like what's going on. She tells them about the vitality charm, I think, and also updates about Ace's helmet because it's encased in chromium and she can't get to it, and she tried earlier kind of like using chemistry and to try and erode the metal, but it didn't work. So they kind of like hatch their plan like going forward, and then like Nova sees like movement out the corner of her eye, and it's a butterfly, so that's Dana. So they capture Dana and prevent her from going and sharing this information, because as long as one of Dana's butterflies are trapped, she can't, like, she's stuck as a bunch of butterflies and she can't turn back into a person. After that, there's this gala. Nova sneaks away from the gala and then goes to get Ace's helmet, so she sneaks kind of like back in, except she's a renegade so she can go wherever she wants, kind of, and she goes to steal the helmet as Nightmare, so she's dressed up as Nightmare, so now everyone's gonna know that Nightmare is alive. Adrian and Ruby and Oscar end up at the catacombs where Ace is because Dana's butterflies like led them there, I believe. And so they meet Ace basically, and they have a fight with him. Ace is really weak because he got a lot of his power sucked away from Max, and also because he's been hiding underground for like a decade and hasn't seen any sunlight since. So he's like sick and weak. So they're able to defeat him and restrain him, and they make it look like the Sentinel did it and that they came upon him because Dana's butterfly led them there, and they're gonna make it look like the Sentinel did this so that everyone kind of has a better view on the Sentinel. Also, while this is happening, Nova has stolen Ace's helmet, and she's encountered Frostbite and her team, Frost Witch. So they all fight. It's a big mess, and she puts some of them to sleep. She also uses Agent N in like a gas form while she's being protected by the Vitality Charm, so she's not affected by it. All of their powers get taken away because she uses Agent N and she puts them to sleep, and Max has entered the fray because the quarantine like collapses, and Max sends a message to Adrian and says, "Nightmare's here, she's stealing Ace's helmet, and I'm going to stop her." Which, when I read that, I was so scared. Max going after Nightmare within this like battle, that's not going to end well. So he goes and he tries to get the helmet back from Nightmare and like to stop her. Nightmare and Frostbite are fighting, and Frostbite goes to stab Nightmare, and instead of hitting Nova, because Nova dodges, she hits Max, because Max was behind Nova this whole time and he was invisible because he was using the invisibility that he got from Simon. Max just falls to the ground because he's been impaled basically, and Nova starts freaking out because this is Max and he's hurt. Frostbite is getting her powers like sucked from her because she's close to Max, and that's what Max does. And so ice starts like forming over his wound. This ice is keeping him from completely bleeding out basically. She corners Frostbite and she's like, "Give him your power now." And then Frostbite says no, and Nova says this is the only thing that could save him, and Frostbite doesn't care. Nova just takes Frostbite and forces her down next to Max. She puts her to sleep and dumps her body next to Max so Max can absorb all of Janissa Clark's power. And then the ice around his wound starts getting thicker, and then right at that point, Adrian bursts in. So now it looks like Nightmare has tried to kill Max, which isn't what happened. She was trying to save Max. Nova has to run with the helmet, and she gets away, and Adrian loses it. He grabs Max, he brings him to a hospital, he gets a doctor to see him, a non-prodigy doctor because he can't have a regular doctor seeing him, and we don't know what's going to happen to Max now. Nova gets back to her like house, and there's a meeting with like the anarchists, and Phobia tells them that that Ace has been captured. They've arrested him, they're holding him, and what they're going to do is they're going to publicly take away Ace's powers in front of everybody, and it's going to be how they reveal Agent N to the public because they've only revealed it to the Renegades so far, and this is going to be their plan when they tell the public about Agent N. Also, at that moment, Adrian comes to Nova's house because he's so distraught and he needs to see someone, talk to someone, and obviously he wants to talk to Nova, so he just tells Nova, Nightmare broke in, she took Ace's helmet, and she tried to kill Max. And Nova didn't know what happened to Max at this point, so she knows that Max is still alive, but he's very tediously like hanging on. So she's kind of relieved that Max isn't dead yet, but she's also worried because she doesn't want him to die, and also Nightmare is being held responsible for this. So it's going to make it even worse when all of the lies come out and it's revealed that Nightmare is Nova. So Adrian is just like, she has gone too far. I'm going to find Nightmare. I'm going to destroy her. Nova, will you help me? And then Nova says, yes, I will help you. as she's looking past him, like into the shadows where Ace's helmet is gleaming. And that is the end. That is the end of Arch Enemies. I don't even know how to process this right now because I didn't even read this when it came out. I read this like literally a few days ago was when I finished it, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. Supernova comes out in November. That's like 6 months away, and I have to wait 6 months for this next book. So Marissa Meyer knows how to do plot twists and cliffhangers because the Lunar Chronicles was nothing compared to what we've gotten in Renegades. The biggest cliffhanger I think we had in Lunar Chronicles, at least in my opinion, that I was like, oh my gosh, spoilers for the Lunar Chronicles if you haven't read this. So I think that was just like in the end of Scarlet when Kai agrees to marry Levana. I basically have the same reaction as Cinder. I would have definitely taken off my boot and thrown it at the screen. Marissa Meyer knows what she's doing with these cliffhangers because first we find out Ace is alive, and now we have Nova supposed to be helping Adrian catch herself. I don't know what's going to happen in this next book, but it's like going to be a ride. I'm not sure what the page count is exactly, but I think it's like 500 or so pages, so it's going to be shorter than Winter. But it's still going to be a ride, and there's going to be a lot that's going to be needed to be wrapped up, and I'm so apprehensive as to what's going to happen when all of these secrets come out, and it's just all going to come crashing down because it's not going to take very long, I feel like, because once Dana is free, she's gonna tell everybody who Nova is, and like I can't imagine that it would like be very far into the book. I don't know how far it is, but yeah, I'm freaking out. I can't believe I have to wait 6 months, but I will wait because I have no choice. So quickly onto like some theories or whatever I think that's gonna happen in Supernova. Obviously, Adrian and Nightmare are Adrian and Nova. Their identities are gonna be revealed, but I don't know how, I don't know when. Basically, biggest theory I have, or like idea I have of what's going to happen, we still don't know what's happened to Adrian's mom, and basically what I think has happened, which I think Phobia killed Adrian's mom, and I think that Adrian made Phobia, but on accident, because he said when he was a kid he had all these nightmares about this monster, and he would draw this monster. I think basically he inadvertently brought one of them to life and kind of created Phobia in a sense. That's why we don't have any backstory on Phobia. That's why we don't know anything about him. So that's what I think, and I could be totally proven wrong. I know I'm not the only person that thinks it though, so I'm not gonna take credit for the idea. Like, I did pretty much come up with it on my own, but I know I'm not the only one that thinks it. That's what I think. I also don't know if we're gonna get anything more about Nova's parents or anything like that, because there was the whole thing when Nova tried to read like the report on her parents and she couldn't get into it, so that makes it seem like there's something even more that's going on just besides what Ace told her, and I don't know what that is, but I feel like we might find out. We might get to know. The star that's on that's the star that's on Nova's little bracelet now. I don't know what that is, but I think it might kind of lend some power to Nova. I also think Nova might have to use Ace's helmet or something. I'm not sure, because there's the whole deal with her bracelet being drawn to the helmet, so maybe they were meant to be companion pieces. I'm not sure. I can't wait. There's just so much going through my brain about it. I can't think of it, and while I've been recording this, the cover for Supernova has been released, and I haven't seen it because I was recording this book review and book talk, whatever, so I'm gonna end this now. I highly recommend Arch Enemies and Renegades. I recommend this trilogy to anyone who hasn't read it, even if you say to watch this video without reading these books. I say definitely read them, even though I kind of just spoiled everything for you. Read them, because I haven't spoiled Supernova for you, because that book hasn't happened yet. So pick them up, give them a read, go to your library or go to your local bookstore, or download them onto your phone, like through Kindle or Nook, whatever. Just read them. This is basically it. I might do Renegades, I'm not really sure. I also will probably do like other books as I read them, because I like to watch book talks and book reviews. I think they're fun. I also would get the chance to talk about them, and If that's of interest to anyone, I'll probably do it. I'll probably do it anyway. Bye, I'll see you next time, whatever I'm doing, whether it's a book review or a cooking, whatever, or a cover. I hope you all have a great day. I hope I didn't talk your ear off too much and freak you out. And I hope my ramblings were somewhat coherent. So, see you.